Hey, this is Christian Buckley, Microsoft Regional Director and MVP, and I am interviewing Mark Rackley, an Office Apps and Services MVP and the Chief Strategy Officer?
Yes,
All
that's you.
right, CSO at Pate Group, on the topic of using Microsoft Teams for online and hybrid events. Topic near and dear to your heart. As part of the ESPC community, hey, Mark, thanks for connecting with me this morning.
Hey, thanks for having me. Long time listener, first time caller.
That's right. All right. Well, let's jump right into it. Okay. Here's question number one. So, you recently ran the North American Collaboration Summit. This is your 11th year of that event, held in Branson, Missouri. And you did it as a hybrid event. What was the event and why did you decide to run it as a hybrid event?
Yeah, so like you said, we've been doing this event for 11 years now. It started off as a SharePoint Saturday and it's grown into a multi-day conference. And we originally had planned to do it this year on April 2nd. And if you can go back to April 2nd, that was literally 2 weeks after the world shut down. So I had all my contracts were signed, I had all my fees paid, I had everything ordered, had all the signage purchased, and then the world shut down. So I had to postpone the event. So I was able to postpone it to the end of September, and I figured and surely everything would be going again, right? Into September, no problem. And then the end of September rolled around. Start parts of the country were still shut down. Parts of the country were opening back up. They had actually been doing events in Branson since May at our convention center, so they kind of knew what they were doing and how to handle keeping the social distancing clean and stuff. And I figured, let's go for it. If there's a time to do a hybrid event and give it a shot, let's now's the time. Let's be the first. Let's see if it can be done or not. And
And,
it worked out really
and
well.
people that don't go to attend a lot of conferences may not be aware of this, but I mean, Microsoft came out and announced that they pushed all in-person events to next fiscal year, which begins July 1st, 2021. So they have this was Inspire. I mean, build, Inspire, Ignite, the
MVP Summit.
MVP Summit, build again, and anything else, the business apps event, all of that stuff, as well as the worldwide the Ignite the Tour events, all got shuttered as well. So I mean, but as far as other community events, most of them delayed or canceled. But yours was the first to say that I'm in the certainly within the Microsoft 365 area said we're going to go forward with it and do it as a hybrid. Was it technically the first hybrid event in the Microsoft community tenant?
As far as I know, this event is the first hybrid Microsoft community event. And I put those adjectives in front of it, and I'm 99% certain we're the first in that genre.
Well, question number two. So using Microsoft Teams for your hybrid event. So what worked well?
So yeah, so for those that aren't aware, Microsoft has this community tenant program. It's actually currently in a pilot phase, which I was a part of. It'll be rolling out to the next phase soon. But Microsoft opened up this tenant for us to allow us to organize our events. And worked really well is that they gave us the ability to do whatever we wanted to with this tenant. And since it's a hybrid event, since I'm using Microsoft Teams, I wanted to think of a way to make it easy for attendees to know where they're going and what they're going to do. Because, we had 4 tracks that were in person, we had 2 tracks that were online only, and I wanted to give the attendees this experience of being in an event. So we ended up creating channels, a lot of channels. Instead of creating a channel for like developers or a channel for every session, we created a channel for each track. So if you walked into a physical room in Branson, there was a corresponding channel in the team. And this meant if you were in person in Branson or online, you knew where to go to get to a session. And that actually worked well. The other thing that worked well is that a lot of the attendees paid extra to go to workshops. So I couldn't just create that stuff normally as you would in Microsoft Team, but I was able to use private channels. So I created private channels for the workshops and then used PowerShell to add the people that paid extra to those channels. So that made it very easy to give them the extra functionality they paid for, extra features and extra stuff without doing anything too complicated. We also had private channels for sponsors and for speakers and for other internal communications. We were able to do things like add tabs to the channels. The sponsors each had their own channel, so they could go and decorate it how they wished, gave them a place to interact with the attendees. The last thing that worked really well is that this was, handling Teams meetings for all this stuff. We did Teams meetings instead of live events because we wanted to give the attendees the opportunity to chat with each other and talk
That's a
and
big
participate.
distinction because there's a lot of questions that come out about meetings versus live events and what would work within this model. I think the concern for everybody was interaction, and I'll say that from having participated, one of the highlights or the takeaways from this, people that whether they were in person or online, in person people were joining in with some of the discussions that were happening online, and feedback from people who joined online were like, this level of interaction was fantastic.
Yeah, and I think people are getting burnt out on virtual events. I mean, they really are. They're all over the place right now, and I think giving them that interactivity really allows them to feel like they're part of the event. And the moderators, which you guys were key to that as well. So while the people were speaking, these moderators were kind of watching the chat, answering questions where they could, and communicating with the speaker. So all those things really help make the experience just really work well.
There's something to be said about having like a proxy there on your behalf, like the interaction, versus everybody's virtual. We've got the fake backgrounds, like I'm sure those aren't real bacon behind you. That's just an artist rendering. No, but having seeing people, and a lot of times people that kind of in the room, it makes a difference than the pure online, even if you're not able to be there physically.
Yeah, agreed. And I think what was great for also the people who were virtual is that the speaker was presenting to a live room. So the speaker was getting feedback from people that were actually there. So they're not just sitting in front of the computer staring at it. They're getting some energy from the people that are actually there. And I think that translates over well online as well. So it's just more, I think vibrant's a good word to those people who are attending online.
Well, I'm sure everything ran perfectly.
Perfectly.
So, question number three. What would you say did not work well using Microsoft Teams for this hybrid event?
I don't know if anything just flat out didn't work well. I think we had some snags along the way to be aware of. One of the biggest ones is that I was using Microsoft Forms a lot for raffles and for to gather information. And when you're using Microsoft Forms, it's interesting that if you're logged in to Teams or to SharePoint and you go to Forms, it doesn't automatically log you in with the current account you're logged into with Teams. It may log you in with a different account. So people were getting a lot of access denied when they tried to open Forms, and I have to say no. Open it in incognito window. Make sure you log in with the correct credentials, and then they can get to it. Um, that was probably the biggest, I think, hiccup that we had along the way. The other thing that will definitely do better next time is that, but this one's my fault. It's not Teams' fault. Is the way I had all the Teams meetings links in there. I would have it where you would go to the channel for the session, and then the links for the Teams meetings were in that channel. Well, people wanted one place to go to see all the sessions and all the links to the Teams meetings for those sessions, and we had that set up, but it got set up kind of late. But definitely, I would do
Yeah,
that differently next
using
time.
lists, which was a brilliant way of organizing that. But right, so that you have one menu of the schedule with the rooms, with the speakers, and could click on, even if the link is repeated. Because one thing that you didn't have the separate links for each session. There was morning sessions in that room, afternoon sessions in that room. But to have the links in each of the boxes, so somebody who's jumping between rooms can just select based on speaker or title and click into it without having to think, okay, which room do I go into? Which channel do I need to go find this under?
Yeah. Um, Absolutely. And the other thing that didn't work well was, and I thought it would be better than it did, was sponsor bingo. So
Mm.
the challenge we have with these online events is how do we get the sponsors engaged? How do they get the value for their money? And all my sponsors paid thinking they were going to be there in person, right? So they paid a little bit more. So we tried to do the sponsor bingo, but instead of having a card people stamped, which they couldn't obviously do, we gave each sponsor a secret word. And it was up to the attendees to go find this secret word from the sponsor and in their channel. And it ended up being more complicated than I anticipated. But I mean, how do you do that? Like, does the sponsor hide it in a message? Do they just reach out and chat and ask for it, but then they're overwhelmed? People asking for their secret word, and we ended up getting it was a low participation rate for that. I think like 20% of the people actually submitted the bingo cards. So that's something I would like to figure out because I want to figure out how to give those sponsors the value for their money, but at the same time, make it not overly complicated for the attendees to do.
That's one of those topics. I mean, in the past, I've heard it referred to as, sponsors are the necessary evil of community events. I think that's a very crass description because the you can find out so much about what's happening with the platform with Microsoft 365 by talking to the vendors who, they're filling gaps in the technology, and it helps you better understand kind of the maturity of the platform and answer a lot of technical questions about what's unique about your organization. Figuring out that value add for sponsors. Now, granted, when you're in a pure online event, your costs are not the same as renting out a convention center and
Yep.
feeding people and all those. I think that's the number one. Number two, the event location, food costs. Sometimes the food cost exceeds the event location.
Well,
Uh,
I
yeah,
get the event location for free if I meet food cost minimums. So,
there
that's
you
the
go.
way, yeah.
There you go. But yeah, finding that value for those sponsors to keep them participating while not lessening the attendee experience. I mean, it's something that you have to think about whether you're in person or online.
Absolutely.
And you did hybrid, so you were doubly difficult there. Yeah,
Yes, I decided to double the stress. Why not?
that's right. Well, Mark, really appreciate your time, taking the time to answer these three questions today. And thanks a lot. I know you've got content that's part of the program, uh, so the full conference. So we'll look forward to seeing that. And thanks a lot, Mark Rackley.
Yeah. Thanks, Christian.